The streak. The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania was one of the top attractions in WrestleMania's history for years, decades even. It spanned that long. For 21 straight matches, The Undertaker remained unbeaten before the streak finally came to an end at WrestleMania 30 at the hands of Brock Lesnar. But before then, the streak was, in a lot of ways, the longest-running storyline, not just in WrestleMania history, but in the history of wrestling, because like I said, every match in the streak, whether Undertaker was a face or a heel, whether the match was any good or not, and Taker had some stinkers at WrestleMania, which they're going to get covered here. But regardless of whether the match was the main event, world title was on the line, whether it had no build-up at all, whether it was a squash match, whatever, it didn't matter. Every match in the streak contributed to a much larger storyline that evolved from year to year as the streak kept getting, it was like a snowball rolling down a hill. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it finally came to a head at WrestleMania 30 when the streak ultimately ended. Now, this best to worst list will not include the match with Bray Wyatt from WrestleMania 31 for two reasons. One, I hate that match. It sucks, and I have no desire to revisit it. And two, the streak was already broken by that point, so really, is like, why even bother going back to it at that point? Maybe if the match was better, I'd feel more compelled to revisit it, but I'm viewing enough shitty matches doing this whole series. I don't need to revisit one more, right? So, with that all said, let's get started. Number one, my favorite Undertaker match in WrestleMania history, to the surprise of no one who's been watching my videos for a long time. For newer viewers, this may surprise you a little bit, but my number one favorite Undertaker match is from WrestleMania 14. The match where he went 7-0 against his brother Kane. Definitely the best build-up that any Undertaker match at WrestleMania ever had. Arguably the best build-up to any match in Undertaker's career. You had the whole storyline where Undertaker's backstory was revealed, where he had a brother Kane and a family, and they ran a funeral parlor, and Undertaker was blamed for burning down the funeral parlor that killed his parents and scarred his brother Kane, and he thought Kane died, but it turns out Kane was alive the entire time, and Paul Bearer was taking care of him, had him committed to an asylum or some shit. Again, they put a lot of thought into this, and it was fucking great. And 20 years later, Kane came back to get his revenge on The Undertaker. And, I mean, the story practically wrote itself. It was brother versus brother. It was, it was supernatural elements coming to a head against each other, which was great. You had this unstoppable brute force, like a Jason Voorhees type in Kane, who seemed unstoppable. Like, he just couldn't be stopped. And on the other side, you had the mythical kind of, dark, shrouded in mystery Undertaker. And they were both kind of two sides of the same coin, so you had that kind of over-the-top element to it. And then you get to the match, and it just, everything just combined and worked out perfectly. I mean, I said it before in previous videos, this match had a little bit of everything. You had like I said, you had the personal element with them being brothers. You had the over-the-top aspect with Kane practically no-selling almost all of Undertaker's offense and Taker getting the holy hell beat out of him. You had like a sports logic to it where the way Taker gained an advantage was the rope-a-dope strategy, where he would basically let Kane punch himself out by covering up and blocking all the shots. And then eventually Kane would tire out and Undertaker could get an advantage. I mean, it had a little bit of everything, and I really liked it. You had that one really awesome spot where Undertaker went for the over-the-top rope dive, and Kane kind of caught him, sidestepped him, and slammed him through the announce table, which looked insane. Like, even when I went back and revisited this match, and I've seen that match at least 24 times. That spot never ceases to amaze me. I'm like, I don't think they could do that again if they tried. It's that amazing of a spot. It's like, thank God they hit it when it counted. But yeah, and then it took 3 tombstones to beat Kane, which put Kane over the top. That he was one of the first one. He was the first one in years since like the Hogans and the Warriors to ever kick out of the tombstone, and that really put Kane apart from everybody else. And this was before kicking out of the tombstone became an annual thing at WrestleMania and people stopped caring. It's like okay, we'll pop because it's a near fall, but it's really not. We know there's going to be a kick out because we see it every year now. But But at this point, it was very rare, so it actually felt like a big deal. It was like, oh my God, Kane can't be stopped, and he kicked out of 2 of them? That's insane. And, of course, eventually the third one put him down. But, yeah, from the story to the execution to, all the other elements I just talked about, this match just had everything. The psychology, the emotion, the drama, it was all there in this match. And it's not only my favorite Undertaker WrestleMania match, it's one of my favorite Undertaker matches, period. The only other match I would put up there with it as being like a number 1 favorite would be the Shawn Michaels Hell in a Cell match from Bad Blood 97. That's how highly I like this match. I think it's one of the most brilliantly put together matches I've ever seen. And no matter how many times I rewatch it, I still feel that way. I'm trying to think of something else I can add to that without sounding redundant. But, this match was just great. It's one of my favorites. I know... I think one of the reasons it tends to get overlooked is because Kane and Undertaker wrestled each other so many fucking times that people got sick of seeing it. And this match kind of got lumped in with all their other matches. And I absolutely got sick of seeing Undertaker and Kane. I remember thinking by 2000, when they revisited the feud for SummerSlam of that year, I was like, we're still doing this? Really? We're still doing Undertaker and Kane? Haven't we gotten this match like 24 times now? It was, by this point, I was just sick to death of it. But for the first match, it was by far their best one, and it was an excellent match. And it's one of my personal favorites in all of Mania history, quite honestly. I think when I did my top 30 series, I think I put that match at number 4. That's how highly I regard this match. Number 2, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. Undertaker goes 17-0 for that particular one. And yeah, I've talked about this before. I talked about it with Shawn Michaels and what it meant to him at WrestleMania. But for Taker, this was... it was the start of something bad that would unfortunately pay off. It would eventually come and bite WWE in the ass when you get to the Lesnar match. But for the first time, it was great because it was the first like real big finisher fest Undertaker match. So basically, Shawn and Undertaker just went out there and killed each other and just kicked out of finishers for half an hour, and it was insane. I mean, again, Shawn kicked out of the Tombstone. Nobody since Kane had kicked out of the Tombstone, so it felt like a big deal when Shawn did it. The fatigue of both men felt real. It really felt like they beat the hell out of each other. And it got so over the top, it was almost like, man, what are they going to have to do to each other to put the other man down? And I thought the finish was really well designed, even though I remember watching it live, and I'm thinking, it's like, wouldn't it be awesome if Undertaker caught Shawn on the moonsault and used that to set up the Tombstone? And I'll be damned if that's not exactly what they did. One of my rare, like, I'm a psychic moments for being a wrestling fan. But, the match was very cool. Didn't have much of a storyline going for it, and we all knew Taker was going to win because Shawn ending the streak, especially at this point, would have been one of those situations where I was like, well, wow, Shawn end the streak? That'd be stupid. What's he going to do with the win, you know? And, for ignoring the fact that the storyline wasn't that great and ignoring the fact that Shawn winning was a complete impossibility, I thought the match came off very, very well, and it's highly regarded amongst fans as being one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time. I don't rank it up quite as high as a lot of other people do. Obviously, I rank the Kane match above it, but it is a very exciting match, and it is a classic, so absolutely, it gets a lot of praise from me. So, like that one. Number 3 on my list, The Undertaker versus CM Punk from WrestleMania 29. Undertaker's last victory at WrestleMania, and the match where he went 21-0. Some people may think I'm ranking this one a little bit too high. The live experience definitely plays a factor to it. I attended this WrestleMania. I was there live, and to be there in that crowd, as a good portion of them were chanting for CM Punk, I was one of them, and a bunch of people were chanting for Undertaker, and it was a very exciting match with a great atmosphere. I mean, it killed the rest of the show because Lesnar Triple H didn't live up to it at all, and Rock and Cena didn't live up to it at all. So it was really like, that was kind of one of those situations like, all right, we just saw the main event, so we're all good. But yeah, it was a very good match. Had some of the finisher fest qualities of like the Triple H matches and the Shawn Michaels matches, but where this one kind of broke apart, they got a little bit more creative in terms of like some of the stuff that they did as far as playing with the characters go. Punk was full on heel at this point and doing a fantastic job. and some of the stuff they did. Of course, I'll always remember Punk doing the top rope elbow drop onto the announce table, and the table didn't break, which made it seem sicker because it's like, oh god, the table didn't break, and he just landed with a splat like a thud, and it's like that could not have felt good. Could not have felt good. But some of the other things they did, I want to know who came up with that Anaconda Vice spot where Undertaker sat up while in the Anaconda Vice and just stared down Punk. That was an awesome visual, and I would love to know who came up with that, because I'm pretty sure it was Punk, because it was just too cool of a visual. It just felt like something that Punk would have come up with. And this match also had some elements of the old Shawn and Undertaker matches from 97 and 98, like the Hell in a Cell, like the Casket match, and other ones, where Shawn was like a Weasley prick trying to get away from Undertaker or trying to find ways to outsmart Undertaker rather than full-on beat him. And some of the stuff they did, like, they did the corner mount spot where Punk was mounting Taker, and, it's like, all right, Taker's going to hit the last ride. But they tweaked it a little bit by having Punk grab the urn from Paul Heyman and using that to smash Taker over the head to try and steal the victory. A bunch of little things like that made this match a little bit more exciting, a little bit more creative than the straight-up finisher fest matches that you'd seen in some of the more recent Undertaker WrestleMania matches. And I thought it was very good and very exciting. Again, there's not much in the way of a build-up here. If Paul Bearer hadn't died, this match would have had nothing going for it. Nobody thought Punk was going to win. And when I say nobody, I mean absolutely nobody thought Punk was going to win. But, and if you did, you're lying to yourself. You knew. You knew. Come on. Yeah, you did. You knew. That was another problem with the streak. By the end of it, it was like, it got painfully obvious that Taker was going to go over in most situations. But yeah, I thought the Punk match was very good. And again, the live experience contributes a lot to me ranking it so high. And really liked it. I thought it was a very creative, fun, exciting match. And I was happy to be there to witness it. Number 4, the other match with Shawn Michaels. This one at WrestleMania 26, streak versus career. Undertaker went 18-0, and Shawn Michaels' career came to an end. I think the match kind of paled in comparison to the 25 match because I've talked about this before, but little things like, okay, once Shawn kicked out of the Tombstone the year before, you knew he was going to do it at this one, so it wasn't as shocking this time around. And a bunch of dramatic little things like that, they kept this match from being quite as good, but it did have the emotional impact of Shawn Michaels' career coming to an end, and Undertaker being the one to do it. It really kind of enhances Taker that... really like the victims of the streak, where it's like, God, he beat legends, he's beat monsters, he's beat everybody, and he's even ended careers. He ended Shawn Michaels' career at WrestleMania. So, one of the more highly regarded victories in the streak, I guess. It's like one of the most significant victories out of all 21 of the matches that he won. So, yeah, this one's historically significant for that. They wisely gave them the closing spot, which I think was the right way to go for this particular instance. And I thought, once again, both guys went out there, had a very exciting match, knockdown, drag-out fight, bit finisher festy, like I said, but very good, and a very strong main event to WrestleMania 26. Number 5, Undertaker versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania 21. Taker goes 13-0. Legend versus Legend Killer. This one was, and I know I've said this before, this match was the last time I felt like the streak was in danger. And I know that's kind of sad that the 13th one was the last time I felt like the streak was in danger, and then the streak got all the way to 21, and I never thought the streak was in danger. It's kind of sad, but it's true. I thought Orton was a guy that WWE was very high on, that they wanted to build a future around, and it just felt like, oh my God, what if Orton could do it? And I've often wondered, Randy Orton got hurt, and actually, right after this WrestleMania, he had to take time off. Actually, I think the next night on Raw, he got squashed by Batista to set up his time off and get him off TV. I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that was the next night after WrestleMania. And I've often wondered if Orton was supposed to go over, and then they nixed it because he had to take time off due to surgery. I don't know for sure, and I doubt we'll ever know. But I've often wondered if that was the case, like if Orton was actually supposed to go over, beat the streak. But If he's just going to go away, you can't really like give him that big a win and then just have him go away and go off for surgery or something. It's like, no, that you need him on TV at least somewhat regularly, not every week, obviously, because nobody should be on TV every week. I don't know. It just seemed very likely that Orton was going to go over in this one, and thank God, Taker and Orton crossed paths, because Orton got really hurt after the face turn and split from Evolution and the feud with Triple H, which didn't do him any favors. I think the feud with Undertaker kind of revitalized him. They got a very nice string of matches out of it, I thought. I thought the matches those two had were very, very good, and culminated at the Hell in a Cell match at the end of the year. But the WrestleMania match, to me, is their best one. It was most exciting. The crowd was hot for it. You had a clear-cut heel, clear-cut face that everybody respected. And you had that one moment. And I know I've talked about this before, but when Randy Orton countered the RKO out of the choke slam, and he turned it into an RKO, I was like, oh my God. I remember it like it was yesterday. I jumped out of my chair and I was like, oh my God, the streak's over. I thought Randy Orton had just ended the streak right there. And that was the last time I truly felt like the streak was over. Even when Lesnar beat him at 30, and I'm going to talk about that, I was like, wait, that's it? I was like, really? But again, we'll get there when we get there. But that when Randy Orton hit that RKO, I was like, oh my God, I thought it was over. I thought he'd beaten Taker right then and there. So for that moment alone, to get me to almost shit my pants, going like, oh my God, the streak just ended, this match deserves a lot of praise. And I think it's very good. I think it kind of... like I said, it kind of saved Randy Orton's career in a lot of ways, and it was a very good match all around, very exciting, one of the better matches from WrestleMania 21. Number 6, from WrestleMania 28, The Undertaker goes 20-0 against Triple H, his third WrestleMania win over Triple H, this time in a Hell in a Cell match. And like I said, it made sense to do a Hell in a Cell match between these two because they were both kind of the kings of Hell in a Cell. So it felt like a very natural thing, a natural combination to have them work this gimmick match. And I thought the match was very good. I thought, again, bit finisher festy because Undertaker kicked out of everything under the sun again. And, of course, the tombstone had to be kicked out of again. So got a little ridiculous. I've argued that took away from the WWE title match later in the show, but we'll cover that in the next entry. And but yeah, I thought Shawn played a great role as the special guest, the overly emotionally invested special guest referee. But he played a nice role in the drama. I thought the match was like very hard hitting and brutal and everything, and a very exciting match, very good. Of course, we all knew Undertaker was going to win, and of course, I have to bring this up again. They called the match the end of an era, and it wasn't the end of anything, but for what it was, I thought it was a very exciting match. It was the best match from WrestleMania 28 and very good all around. So the best WrestleMania match that these two had together, by far, I think. Well, maybe not by far, because number 7 on my list is from WrestleMania 17, as Undertaker went 9-0 against Triple H. This one was at the tail end of the Attitude Era. It was the only... not only, but it was the first American Badass Undertaker WrestleMania match. So it was the first time he came out on the motorcycle and everything, which looked great on the in that particular venue, the big Astrodome, where him just letting the motorcycle cut free and just zooming on down that highway. That was really, really, really looked very cool. And Undertaker, that's another thing I haven't really talked about. Undertaker's entrances at WrestleMania tend to be amazing. I mean, the Druid entrance at 14 was amazing. He'd copied that a few other times. The Rise from the Grave kind of entrance that he had at 29 with like the people kind of grabbing at him as he kind of rose up through the stage or whatever, that looked very cool. There's a lot of great Undertaker WrestleMania entrance at 9 when he came out on the chariot with the black bird. So usually at WrestleMania you can count on Undertaker having a pretty awesome entrance. And as far as the American Badass ones go, I thought the one at 17 was the best because A, it didn't have a shitty live musical entrance like he did at 19, and B, it just looked cool to see the motorcycle just zoom on down like that. But Yeah, the match itself, it was the end of the Attitude Era, and this was one of the last really big pairings that we'd never really gotten on pay-per-view before. So it was really cool to see, and I thought it was a very natural mesh between the two. The build-up was like the typical 1 month rushed build-up, but for that, I thought it was very well handled and very good, and you wanted to see Undertaker just beat Triple H's ass. I thought for sure the streak was going to end here because it was the first time they ever made anything out of the streak, tried to make a big deal about it, and because it was the first time they'd ever really mentioned it, I was like, oh, well, it must be coming to an end this time. And it didn't, and it would go on for much longer after this. Little did I know what we were in store for. And I thought the match was very exciting. It was a little crazy. The referee who stayed unconscious for far too long to be remotely realistic. That's one thing in wrestling, these referees that take these bumps, how many of them go and see neurologists for concussions or whatever? Because my God, I mean, they should be the most brain damaged people on the whole show. But yeah, the referee was out for very long, but you did get that brawl through the crowd and a bunch of other craziness, which was actually a little bit more creative than the norm because they went to the production tower and did some crazy stuff off of that, like Undertaker chokeslamming Triple H off the tower, and which you don't see very often. So it was like, okay, that's a little different, a little bit cooler than what we normally get. And it was just this wild and crazy, chaotic match. That was a lot of fun to watch. Undertaker broke out the tombstone. You got that spot where where Triple H countered the last ride by smashing a sledgehammer into his face. And this was the invention, or the first time Undertaker used the corner mount last ride combo, which he used a lot after this. But this was the first time I ever saw him do it with. Triple H was mounting him in the corner and punching him, and then Undertaker just countered it, picked him up in the last ride, and just slammed him down, got the win. Yeah, very good. Very, very good match. Very exciting. I don't think it's the show-stealing match that some people said it was at the time. I think Rock and Austin was the best match from this WrestleMania, but that's just me. Very good stuff, though. Very exciting. Nice little brawl to have. And like I said, it was one of the last really big pairings from the Attitude Era that we'd never really gotten on pay-per-view. So I really enjoyed it for that. And it was very good. Number 8, The Undertaker versus Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 23. This year, Undertaker went 15-0, winning a World Championship at WrestleMania. Actually, Undertaker is one of the most successful world title contenders in WrestleMania history, as he's won 3 world titles in WrestleMania the entire, throughout his career, which is puts him in a pretty elite class. Not many others can say. I think it's only Hogan and Cena who have done that. And I don't even think Cena's won 3 world titles. He's successfully defended a lot, but I'd have to go back and check my stats on that one. But yeah, that puts Undertaker in pretty rare company. And this was the. It wasn't the main event of this WrestleMania, but as many people have said, it probably should have been. Because people wanted Undertaker to win, and nobody wanted Cena to retain, so probably ending on the Undertaker win would have been better. I don't know. We'll never know. But yeah, this was the biggest match that SmackDown could offer at that point. Batista had been built up fairly well as that brand's top star, and then you had Undertaker, who comes with instant credibility, and just putting these two monsters against each other just resulted in this really big bruiser powerhouse match where they were just beating the crap out of each other, and I really liked how they made Batista look like a physical match for Taker, he could overpower him and break the choke slam and do all sorts of things like that. But as expected, Undertaker defeated Batista, won the title, and walked out of WrestleMania 23 as the World Heavyweight Champion. But it was a very good match, a classic encounter between the two, and one of Batista's better matches, maybe even Batista's best match. Very enjoyable, really liked it. Number 9 is another World Heavyweight title victory for The Undertaker, this time against Edge, which was the main event of this WrestleMania. WrestleMania 24, Undertaker went 16-0. Really good match. I thought Edge and Taker had much better matches down the road later that year. Their Hell in a Cell in particular comes to mind. Their TLC comes to mind. But for a WrestleMania main event, I thought it was really solid. Undertaker winning was never in doubt. This was, even by Undertaker standards, this was one of the most obvious Undertaker's going to win at WrestleMania, because Edge got the best of him constantly, just constantly on TV, and it was he's gonna lose at Mania. You just know it. You just know he's gonna lose at Mania, and he did. But Edge was kind of sort of. I mean, we all say Shawn does, and I do too, but Edge kind of got to kick out of the tombstone because he got hit with it, but the referee was down, and the replacement ref took a long time getting down to the ring to count the fall, and the amount of time it took for him to get down there, Edge was able to kick out of the tombstone. So he kind of got to kick out of it, but not really, not the way Shawn did a year later. So, but in any case, yeah, I thought the match was very good. I thought Edge and Taker typically worked very well together, but like I said, it was pretty obvious who was going to go over. It was Taker. It was Deadman, and he did. 16-0, another World Heavyweight title under his belt, and, but very good. Very good main event all around. Not one of my super favorites like I think it is for a lot of other people on the net, but, as far as telling the basic story of the heel that has the advantage the whole time and the babyface that has to overcome all the odds to defeat him, I thought it worked out very well. And from there, we move to WrestleMania 27, the second match with Triple H. This time it was a no-holds-barred match. Undertaker went 19-0 at this one. This one maybe went a little too long. Is really the biggest knock I have on it because I felt like it was really hot at first and really crazy at first with like crazy shit. Like they broke the coal mine, which was for those of you who don't remember, who don't want to remember, and I'm now reminding you, the coal mine was Michael Cole's own personalized announce table area, and they broke through it at one point during this match. They did that crazy spot where Triple H spine busted the Undertaker through the announce table. It looked so crazy. Undertaker did his over-the-top rope dive. I mean, they were just breaking out all this shit against each other in the first few minutes. It wasn't that long before they started hitting all this stuff. And then by the end of it, it was this really brutal, good match. And then by the end of it, it kind of got a little ridiculous because Undertaker got beaten down and couldn't even stand up and basically wrestled the rest of the match from his back as Triple H just kind of stood there and kept hitting him with a sledgehammer, hitting him with a pedigree, hitting him with everything, I think a tombstone at one point. And it just got to a point where Undertaker just kept kicking out of every little thing that Triple H hit him with. It's like, okay, this is getting a little absurd. I feel like you could have shaved maybe 5 or 10 minutes off of this and still gotten the same point across. I don't know. But for what it was, I thought it was a good match. I thought it was a perfectly acceptable, no-holds-barred match. And, Triple H and Undertaker, maybe they work best when they're not working against young guys that I want to go over. Undertaker eventually was able to sneak away with a win by hitting Hell's Gate on Triple H for the tap-out and would have to be stretchered out of the arena following the match, setting up their Hell in a Cell match the next year. But yeah, this sort of concludes the Triple H Undertaker trilogy at WrestleMania. It's the weakest effort of the three, but still pretty good on its own. So and it was definitely the best part of this particular WrestleMania, which I don't have many kind things to say about this WrestleMania, but this match was good. And from there, we move on to WrestleMania 18, where The Undertaker went 10-0, as he signaled, actually, right after he won, where he actually stood up on the apron and did the, did that, which was actually a very cool visual, and one of those great little highlights that they always put in Undertaker history packages for WrestleMania. Yeah, this year he went up against Ric Flair in a no disqualification match, and it was a good match. The build-up to the match was fine with Undertaker trying to goad Flair out of retirement, and ultimately this match helped set up the brand split because Vince and Flair were business partners and co-owners of the WWE at that point, and Flair participating in this match led to some disagreements in the boardroom and all sorts of things, so it eventually led to the brand split. So this match is significant for that reason, but yeah, the match itself, like I said, it was good. It was a perfectly fine, no disqualification match. Flair was past his prime at this point, but could still get it done in certain situations, and this was a situation where he at least got it done pretty well. I loved Arn Anderson coming out, and I did mark out for that and giving Undertaker a spine buster. And it was nice to see, even though Taker could not get Flair up for the last ride, which looked really bad, he was able to save it by just hitting him with the tombstone anyway, which was probably a sign that it's like, God, dude, just go back to the dead man. You don't have to be You don't have to be the American Badass anymore. And actually, another knock on this match is that for some reason, JR kept trying to call Undertaker Booger Red and trying to get that over. I don't know why. I don't know if that was Vince telling him to do that. I don't know if JR thought that that was a good name for somebody, but old Booger Red. And I'm like, JR, what the fuck does that even mean? JR, I love you, but that's a terrible name to give anybody. I don't know if it was a rib on JR or if it was a rib on Taker. I have no idea, but that name was terrible. But yeah, like I said, a couple mishaps here and there, but overall a pretty solid match. Also has one of the best superplexes I've ever seen, with Taker, like, just, my God, I thought he was going to drill Flair like right through the mat on that one. But as expected, Undertaker did defeat Ric Flair, got his 10th victory, and it was a pretty solid match all around. Another pretty solid one came at WrestleMania 12 when The Undertaker went 5-0, this time against Big Daddy Cool Diesel. These two had never really crossed paths before, but at the Royal Rumble, they started a build-up to this WrestleMania match. It was you had Bret and Shawn in the main event as kind of the classical wrestling match, and the athletic exhibition. This was the slobber knocker, as JR would say, and just the two big guys just knocking the crap out of each other, and it was Undertaker's first really big grudge match at WrestleMania. Like, first one that really felt like kind of a big deal. As all the other ones, it was matches where Undertaker was like, yeah, he should go over. Or kind of like a squash match at 7. Or a match where it's like somebody who's clearly being fed to him. Or the Gonzalez match where it's like, dude, if you're going to shack him up with such a shitty worker, he better win. You know? But this was the first one where it felt like, yeah, this is actually pretty good, like, little feud going here between the two, and it felt like a fairly important WrestleMania match, the second most important match on the card. Well, I mean, it's either that or the Hollywood Backlot Brawl, but yeah, I thought the match delivered. I thought it was good. It was Taker's best WrestleMania match up to that point. Undertaker kicked out of the jackknife and then was able to put Diesel away with the, actually he kicked out of 2 jackknives, if I recall correctly. And was able to put Diesel away with the Tombstone Piledriver. And overall, it was just a good big man match. Just two big guys knocking the crap out of each other. And Undertaker ultimately went over. Diesel was on his way out at this point, so the loss here was expected. But again, this was before the streak really meant anything. So for them to get like a pretty good feud out of it before Undertaker's streak really mattered, that was good. Pretty cool. So yeah, good match. Really liked it. Nice big man match. Number 13, from WrestleMania 8, Undertaker went 2-0 against Jake the Snake Roberts. Pretty much a squash in a lot of ways, where Taker pretty much just destroyed Jake Roberts. But, it felt like a big deal that he beat Roberts as decisively as he did. And, they had just done the Undertaker face turn, which felt really rushed. And I've often wondered if the original plan for this WrestleMania, because we all say it was supposed to be Hogan and Flair for the title. And I've often wondered if not doing that match kind of trickled down and affected other matches. Like, I thought it was going to be Hogan, Flair, Savage, and Jake, and then Sid and Undertaker. And then things got switched around, and then it became Hogan and Sid and Flair and Savage, and then Taker had to be turned face just to give Jake somebody to work with, or whatever. I mean, but the face turn actually got over pretty huge right away, because people, I think, wanted to like Undertaker, and once they turned him face, it was like, oh, wow. Yeah, he became one of the most popular wrestlers in the company almost overnight, because the gimmick was so cool, and, the presentation was so cool. It's like you couldn't help but kind of like the guy. And, yeah, I remember they did that segment on the Funeral Parlor where Jake Roberts attacked Undertaker with a chair and trapped his hand in the casket and DDT'd Paul Bearer on the floor. It was a really awesome segment. And, again, for kind of a rushed build-up, and friends turned enemy story, because these two were partners. Actually, Undertaker helped Jake invade Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth's wedding reception. For those of you who remember that crazy segment with the cobra popping out of the wedding gift box, that was great stuff. But yeah, Undertaker was kind of his accomplice, and then he broke away. And it set up this match here where Undertaker pretty much, like I said, he pretty much dominated Jake up until Jake hit the DDT. And then it was like, oh my God, he hit the DDT. It's over. Nobody gets up from the DDT. And then Undertaker fucking sat up from the DDT. And I was like, holy shit. As a kid, it blew my mind. Because back in the day, because I know in this day and age, we're used to seeing like, 3 or 4 DDTs per match. And that never end the match. Here, back in the day when Jake did it, DDT meant shit was done. Nobody gets up from the DDT. Undertaker did. He sat up from 2 DDTs, and it was like, holy shit, Undertaker. And it really put Taker on that level of like a Hogan or a Warrior in terms of being like that unbeatable kind of superhero type babyface, even though without being like a namby-pamby kind of suck-up type. It put him on that kind of supernatural type of level. Like that unbeatability factor as far as baby faces go. Just little things like that. And I thought that really helped make this match memorable. I think it made Undertaker's victory mean even more. He finished off Jake Roberts with a tombstone on the outside on the floor. Then rolled him in the ring, pinned him, got his second WrestleMania victory, and his first really significant WrestleMania win. That was one where I was like, holy shit. I mean, they must really have something in store for Taker. Like, he's going to be a big deal for a while. And little did I know what he was going to become. But moving right along from there. Number 14, and I think I'm going to catch heat for this one. Number 14, Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez at WrestleMania 9. Undertaker goes 3-0. The reputation that this match has for being one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history, it was overblown then, it's overblown now. I don't understand it. Yes, Gonzalez is a shitty worker. Yes, the outfit looks stupid with the painted ass crack. I fully agree with you. However, I felt like the match was short. It was to the point. They didn't give Gonzalez enough to really show how shitty he was. It was basically just working the entire match around Undertaker trying to knock him down, taking some bumps for the guy, like getting thrown around like a rag doll a little bit. It was actually interesting to see Undertaker get completely dwarfed by somebody. That was a nice visual all on its own. And that was basically the match. It was just this short little thing where Undertaker tried to knock a big guy down. The big guy got himself disqualified by using chloroform, which was a little over the top, but whatever. It was still cool to see like Undertaker carted out of the ring on a stretcher, and you would think, oh my god, this guy just he just knocked out Undertaker. Now, I wouldn't have used chloroform. I would have done something like hit him with a steel chair 30 times or something like a little bit more violent than that. That just feels like, that's cheap heat type of stuff. That's not like brutal, violent type of stuff that a big giant like Giant Gonzalez should be doing. But in any case, it did set up Undertaker being carted out on a stretcher, and the crowd started booing. They actually started chanting Hogan at one point for asking Hogan to come out and work with and take out Gonzalez. But then all of a sudden, you heard the gong, and then Undertaker comes out, storms down to the ring, and fucking clotheslines Gonzalez off his feet. And it looked amazing. It looked fucking cool. I marked out. I marked out again while watching it, rewatching all these matches, and I was like, I don't think the match is that bad. I really do not think this match is that bad. I'm not saying it's one of Taker's best. I'm not saying it's a Mania, like a forgotten Mania gem or anything like that. But for what it is, I felt like it was a match where no damage was done, no harm done, and it was inoffensive, I thought. And I did get a mark-out moment from the poster match, so how bad was it really? But yeah, the reputation that it gets for being the worst match in WrestleMania history, I'm like, yeah, I think all the matches remaining on this list are actually worse, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Number 15, Undertaker versus Jimmy Snuka at WrestleMania 7. Undertaker wins his first WrestleMania match, wins the debut, and the streak begins. Now, this is a match that at the time was pretty much just a filler match. It was a squash match. Undertaker just went out there, dominated Snuka, beat him with a tombstone. They actually kind of botched the finish a little bit. I think what they were going for was that Snuka was going to do a springboard crossbody onto Taker, and Taker was supposed to catch him and then pick him up and turn it into the tombstone, but they didn't quite hit it as well as they should have. So Undertaker kind of had to like put him back down and then pick him up again to hit the tombstone, but whatever. It wasn't the worst thing ever. But at the time, it was just a filler match. It was just, just a way to make Undertaker look strong and building him going forward, because this guy was going to work with Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan later in the year. So they need to give him squash matches. They need to keep him looking strong. And I don't have a problem with squash matches on pay-per-view. I know people kind of lose their shit whenever they see it. It's like, no, they're character builders. They're character builders. They let you know who the dangerous guys are or who the guys that matter are. And then when they're eventually plugged into something big down the road, it actually feels like it means something. Look at what they did with Ryback early on, where he did nothing but win squash matches on pay-per-view, on TV, TV. And then when they had him interact with Punk, it actually felt like, holy shit, Punk's trapped in the cell with the guy that killed everybody. It's simple booking, but it works. And even if squash matches don't seem that important at the time, it tells you, it locks into your subconscious that this guy's dangerous and that he's big and powerful and that he's dominating. And then when he eventually works with guys that do matter, it comes off, it means more down the road. So it sets up things for later on. So I didn't have a problem with the match being what it was. But there's also this weird historical significance that this match has gotten over the years because it was the beginning of the streak. It was Undertaker's first WrestleMania match, first WrestleMania win, and it really kick-started the whole streak storyline. And for a match that was really just a filler squash match, for it to be like, to have that little historical nugget attached to it is actually kind of a big deal. It's kind of Undertaker has one other match like that. His match with Damien Demento from the first episode of Raw. It was the first Raw main event. It was basically just a squash match. Undertaker killed him in like 2 minutes, but it's like, no, that was the first Raw main event. Undertaker versus Damien Demento. Who the hell remembers Damien Demento? I don't know. That might be the most famous match of his career. It was the first Raw main event, and Undertaker beat him. So, it does have that weird little historical nugget attached to it, which kind of raises its significance a little bit. But that said, it is just a squash match, so it's going to rank fairly low on this list. And moving right along to number 16, The Undertaker versus Mark Henry in a casket match at WrestleMania 22. Undertaker goes 14-0. This match is significant for being the only casket match in WrestleMania history. The casket match kind of became Undertaker's signature match. He's had a few other ones, like the Buried Alive. Even Hell in a Cell kind of became his. But the casket match has been really closely linked with Undertaker and nobody else. It's just kind of like, it is recognized as kind of his match. And for that alone, it is significant that this match took place at WrestleMania. Unfortunately, it's also the only reason that this match was significant. We all knew Undertaker was going to win. Henry had no chance of beating him. And it felt like this was the last time it really felt like, it's like, man, they really have nothing for Taker at WrestleMania. They're just kind of giving him Mark Henry, and he's going to beat him, and that's the end of that. And that's pretty much how it played out. The match itself was, it was like watching Undertaker wrestle a tree trunk and basically telling said tree trunk to just stand here so I can hit this spot, stand here so I can hit that spot. And he did the over-the-top rope dive over the casket onto Mark Henry, which was kind of cool. But overall, the match was basically it was just Undertaker beating a fat, big guy in a casket match. So it's, you kind of got two birds with one stone. You got the monster killer, because Undertaker was a monster killer for years and years, early, like in the 90s and stuff. He would be like the giant killer type. They would just, whatever monster they could find, they would just feed him to Taker. And this match was kind of an example of that, even though we're kind of out of the 90s at this point. It was kind of like another example of that, where it's like, oh, we have this big monster, let's just have him work with Taker. And so you got that, but you also get a casket match at WrestleMania. So again, two birds with one stone. Match was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it was, like I said, it was like watching Undertaker work with a tree trunk. But again, only casket match in WrestleMania history, so it is historically significant. Number 17, from WrestleMania 19, The Undertaker went 11-0 in a handicap match against A-Train and Big Show, a match where he was supposed to tag with Nathan Jones, the Colossus of Boggle Road, who had amazing vignettes before coming into the WWE, and people realized this guy's green as goose shit and can't work worth shit. Nathan Jones never panned out as a wrestler. Not so bad in movies. He was really good in Mad Max Fury Road, wasn't he? I am a baby brother! He was perfect in every way! It's like that one line is more memorable than literally anything he did in wrestling. But in any case, match itself was kind of just a throwaway. Again, this was one of those years where it was like, man, there's so many main events on the show. You got Hogan, McMahon, you got Angle and Lesnar, you got Triple H and Booker T for the world title, you got Shawn and Jericho, you got Austin and Rock for the final time. You got nothing for Taker? Really? This is all you got for Taker? It's like, okay. He was the only big main event star that really had no real big Mania match this year. It was really kind of strange, but it was It was Undertaker beating two guys that we knew he was going to beat. Even when they took Nathan Jones away from him, it's like, okay, there's no way that Big Show and A-Train are ending the streak. That's not going to happen. And sure enough, it played out exactly how I thought it would. It felt like a standard SmackDown or Raw match. But for a WrestleMania match, it was kind of like, okay, it was. I guess you kind of had to do it this way, given the status of Nathan Jones and everything. And unfortunately, they were clearly going to do a Nathan Jones Undertaker feud at some point, with Taker playing his like mentor, and then obviously Nathan was going to turn on him and everything, but they never really panned out. So nothing really came of it. It was Undertaker beating two guys that he always beats. He wrestled A-Train a lot. He wrestled Big Show too many times to count, and I don't think either of those guys ever beat him. So. Excuse me. But, so yeah, this match didn't have a whole lot going for it, but it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't terrible on its own. It was just kind of weird that they didn't have anything big for Undertaker at a pretty big WrestleMania. Moving on from there, number 18, his second WrestleMania match with Kane, where he went 12-0 at WrestleMania 20. This one was the return of the Dead Man. Undertaker had been the American Badass for a few years, and Kane had cost him the Buried Alive match against Vince McMahon, and this was going to be Undertaker's grand return as the Dead Man. And as a nice surprise, they brought back Paul Bearer to be his manager. And it looked like, it's like, man, this is going to be really cool. This is going to be a really grand return for the Dead Man Undertaker, the Undertaker we all want. The entrance was awesome. The build-up was awesome. Everything was awesome until the match started. Once the match started, it was like, oh, he's wearing the same outfit he wore when he was the American Badass, and oh, he's still kind of wrestling like the American Badass. He did do the sit-up, which was like, okay, that was cool, but other than that, it was kind of like... It was just like he was the American Badass again. It wasn't really like it wasn't like the classic Dead Man Undertaker that we all wanted. It was kind of felt like, oh, it was like the entrance was all the cool stuff. The match was kind of like, okay, and then Kane got squashed and destroyed. It's like really showed how far he had fallen since WrestleMania 14. So yeah, just a disappointment that it was like, oh, the Undertaker himself wasn't as cool as I was hoping. It took a while for him to like mold the Dead Man Undertaker into something else, where it's kind of this hybrid style with like a little bit of the mixed martial arts and a little bit of a few other things going on, but really with the enhanced supernatural kind of aspects that we all want out of the Dead Man Undertaker. It took him a while to get back to that point, but once he did, it was much better. But for the first night, it was a little disappointing that he looked and dressed like almost exactly like the American Badass, and it just was not as cool as it should have been. And eventually, look at some of the future WrestleManias where he tweaked the outfit a little bit, and kind of the skull designs on the tights and everything. The outfits would get better, the entrances would get better, and everything else. It would be more indicative of classic Undertaker, while incorporating some new things as well. But for the first night, it was a little disappointing. And like I said, the match itself was just a squash. After all that awesome build-up, it was kind of a little disappointing that that's what we got. But, like I said, not the worst thing ever. Now we're moving on to the really bad stuff. Number 19... Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 30. The streak ends 21-1. Brock Lesnar shocks the world with probably the most shocking victory in WrestleMania history as he ended the streak. Now, let me start off by saying that this match is completely terrible. Having rewatched it, I was like, this match sucks. I mean, this is a terrible, boring, lethargic, ponderous, terrible match. Terrible fucking match. And apparently Undertaker had a concussion. He got a concussion early on in the match, and that affected the rest of it. It shows. I think it was this match where he had like the shittiest last ride I think I've ever seen. And it was also boring because, again, it was one of those years where you're just looking at the situation. It's like, all right, Brock Lesnar lost to John Cena in his first match. He lost to Triple H last year at WrestleMania. You just assumed that Taker was going to beat him too. It was like, okay, I mean, whatever. It's like, oh, is that who Taker's going to beat this year? Okay, great. Nobody thought that Lesnar was going to win. And this is where the side effect of all the Finisher Fest Mania matches with Shawn and Triple H really took their toll. Lesnar beat Undertaker with the third F5. Nobody kicks out of the F5. So 3 F5s should have been a believable finish. but Undertaker had kicked out of like 8 dozen chair shots, 3 pedigrees, tombstones, super kicks into pedigrees, and anything else you could possibly imagine for the last 4 years. And even before that, he kicked out of like RKOs and all sorts of other crap. Sat up from the DDT twice. They put so much into that, and it got so over the top and so crazy. Sledgehammer shots, he kicked out of those in almost all the Triple H matches. I think all 3 of them, actually. He kicked out of a sledgehammer shot. So by the time you get to this match, it really took its toll because 3 F5s actually felt anticlimactic as an ending to the streak. It didn't feel like that should be the end. Quite honestly, it got to a point where it almost felt like a gunshot to the face would be the only appropriate end to the streak, because that's how you'd have to do it. But nobody bought it as the finish because everybody was shocked. They were all like, wait, you can almost go back and watch the initial reaction. They're like, 1, 2, wait, 1, 2, 3, what the fuck? They're like, wait, because nobody honestly thought that was going to be the end. And I think that's an unfortunate side effect of all the finisher fests that they had done. And the match was just terrible. It was awful. The only thing that saves it from being lower on this list, and it's 19 of 22, what saves it from being lower is the fact that it is historically significant for being the end of the streak. And to their credit, I didn't think they were going to do it at the time, but they definitely did going forward. They stuck to their guns, and they made Brock Lesnar look like an unbeatable monster and really got something out of the streak. And it really paid off later in the year when Cena just fucking got destroyed at Brock Lesnar's hands. It was like, holy shit, that was amazing. And it was great that they really stuck to their guns with Lesnar, and now you view Brock Lesnar as the most unbeatable guy on the roster because of this match and because they stuck to their guns after this match. And I really appreciate that booking, and I really appreciate that they stuck to their guns there and made it work. I wish they had changed, there were certain things I would have changed. I would have made Lesnar look like more of a threat going into the build-up. I certainly wouldn't have had him lose to Cena in his first match, and I certainly wouldn't have had him lose to Triple H at WrestleMania the year before. Excuse me. Things like that. Be perfectly honest, I probably would have booked the match like the SummerSlam Cena match was booked, where Lesnar just fucking destroyed him and just like, holy shit, he just squashed Undertaker and ended the streak, and just kept everything moving forward from there. But the historical significance and the crowd reaction was really amazing too, and kind of funny. And I can't help but think if I'd actually been there in attendance for this WrestleMania, I would have been the asshole that would have been like, yeah, Brock, and we'll never know if I would have survived, but because by this point I was kind of getting sick of the streak, and I was like, okay, can we just like either retire or end the streak, whatever. Let's just move past this. Because at WrestleMania 29, when I was there, I was trying to start like end the streak chants and all sorts of things like that. So, knowing full well that it wasn't going to end, but it was the shocking ending and the historical significance raised this match above being like probably the worst or the second worst, but it is still a very bad match, and it's unfortunate that the streak had to end under such a shitty match, but what can you do? Number 20, Undertaker versus King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 11. Undertaker goes 4-0. This was during Undertaker's feud with the $1 Million Corporation, where every pay-per-view he worked with a different member of the $1 Million Corporation. At Royal Rumble it was IRS, then at Mania it was Bundy, and then at SummerSlam, King of the Ring, he actually worked with Mabel in the tournament, and Kama cost him that match, and then that set up the SummerSlam match, which was a casket match. So it was like and this actually goes back to the Undertaker versus Undertaker build-up from SummerSlam 94, where Ted DiBiase's fake Undertaker got beat. But yeah, it was it was a very long-running storyline. They did the bit where Ted DiBiase stole the urn, and Kama eventually melted the urn down into a chain, and, again, that's where the Actually, somehow Mabel ended up in possession of the chain, and Undertaker didn't get the urn back until December of that year, if memory serves me right. And then, he melted the chain down and reforged the urn or something like that. But in any case, thought the match was kind of shitty. King Kong Bundy is a big guy that I enjoyed watching at some points of his career, but at this point it was kind of like, he's kind of an old hat trick at this point. And the match just wasn't very good. They did the bit early on where Undertaker got the urn back, and then Kama beat up Paul Bearer and stole the urn, and that kind of threw the match out. All the drama around the match centered around who had the urn. So once they did all that at the beginning and then tried to wrestle the rest of the match, it was like, well, okay, I don't care now. What happened to the urn? That's the only thing I care about at this point. And then Undertaker looked like he was trying to tombstone Bundy, but he couldn't quite hold him up, and he just settled for a body slam instead. And then just beat him with a clothesline, which was kind of weak, like a flying lariat. And it was like, and by flying lariat, I mean like that jumping lariat he does off the ropes, not like a top rope thing. So it looked kind of weak. I was like, really? Bundy jobbed to that? It was like, okay. It was like, I can't believe Bundy agreed to do that. But I hate WrestleMania 11. There's a lot of bad matches on that show. This is one of them. It was a bad match. But yeah, that's all I have. It was just a bad match. Number 21, Undertaker versus Sid at WrestleMania 13 for the WWF World Championship. Undertaker went 6-0, winning his first world title at WrestleMania. His first WrestleMania main event, and it was a snooze fest that I do not blame on Undertaker or Sid at all. To me, they are completely blameless in this match, tanking. They are victims of circumstance. I know it's fun to pick on Sid, and I know I'm one of the few guys that's willing to pick on Undertaker for certain things. This is a situation that was not Taker's fault. It was not Sid's fault. You got the whole thing that went down where Shawn Michaels lost his smile, and we can debate the validity of the injury. That's a whole nother topic for another time. And it threw whatever their main event plans were for WrestleMania completely out of whack. And this was just something that they threw together at the last minute, and it showed. Because nobody really had a reason. You didn't have a reason to really care. There was no build-up, no storyline. It was just kind of like, all right, Taker, can you just go out there and win the belt? Because that's really all we need you to do. I should also note this match was a no disqualification match. I didn't. You'd be hard pressed to actually give a shit because they didn't. I don't think they said it was no DQ until the show. The old Sting Triple H booking at WrestleMania 31. They borrowed that booking because I'm pretty sure Sting Triple H was never no DQ up until WrestleMania when Lillian Garcia made her announcement that it was no DQ. But yeah, the match was boring, long, because you didn't have a reason to care. The only reason there was to care about this match was like, oh, Undertaker's going to win the belt, so whatever. But they even managed to ruin that by having Bret Hart, who had just recently turned heel that night, cheat to help Undertaker win. So it's like, you couldn't even give us a clean title victory for Undertaker. You even managed to fuck that up. It's like, Jesus. WrestleMania, okay, I say 11 is the worst WrestleMania. 13 is one awesome submission match away from being unquestionably the worst WrestleMania, and the main event is one of the reasons why. And every time I talk about this match or think about this match, I actually kind of feel bad for Sid and Undertaker because they had to go out there and try to make that work, and they just couldn't because you can't force investment, and the fans had no reason to invest because the guys that they really cared about being in that main event spot are Taker, Bret, Shawn, and Austin. And Shawn lost his smile, and then Bret and Austin were elsewhere on the card, and Undertaker, Sid was just kind of thrown into that spot just to hold the title, just to give Undertaker somebody to beat. And again, no storyline, no build-up, no nothing. And the end result was a very dull, very boring match where Undertaker won the belt. But it's unfortunately one of his worst WrestleMania matches and one of the worst main events in WrestleMania history. But that brings us to my pick for the worst Undertaker match, not only in WrestleMania history, but I would say in Undertaker's career. The Hell in a Cell match with the Big Boss Man at WrestleMania 15. Undertaker went 8-0. This match was dog shit. Actually, there was a weird pattern with Undertaker at WrestleMania for a few years, where if you look at it, at 11, he had my pick for his worst Mania match up to that point with Bundy. Then he had his best match up to that point with Diesel. Then he had his worst match again with Sid at 13. Then he had his best match again with Kane at 14. And then he went right back down the shitter with his worst match with Bossman. So, at least from my point of view, that was the pattern of Undertaker matches going forward. But this match was terrible for a multitude of reasons. Undertaker was doing the Ministry of Darkness bit at this point, his evil cult to try and take over the WWF. This match had no babyface, and that's always a problem because either the fans will pick a babyface or they won't cheer anybody and they'll just sit on their hands the entire time. And that's kind of what happened here, where it's like, all right, I mean, both characters are kind of evil douchebags, so it's like one's a puppet for Vince McMahon, the other one's an evil asshole that's stalking Vince McMahon's children and threatening to kidnap his daughter, and with that whole thing that took off going forward. Really, it's like this match had no heel. I mean, it had no baby face. And it's like, all right, Undertaker's an evil prick, and Bossman is the stooge of an evil prick. So it's like, okay. They hadn't finished turning McMahon face yet. They would following WrestleMania, but and then ultimately go back to turning him heel with the whole greater power bit. But yeah, it was so kind of a boring situation from that. They made it Hell in a Cell for the sake of spiking buys, I think, but it actually kind of hurt the legacy of Hell in a Cell for a while because you had the awesome match with Shawn, you had that insane match with Foley, and then you get to this one, it's like, all right, there's no story, no reason to care, and they're not going to do anything crazy. They did not do anything crazy, and they ended up having the most boring match you could possibly imagine. The handcuff spot that they didn't really work because the chain broke on the handcuff, so, I don't think they got as much out of that spot as they were hoping. The match was awful. Bossman was past his prime by this point, his physical prime anyway, and wasn't capable of having like a really good match. And Taker was battling a lot of injuries at this point, so the match was just terrible. I mean, it was really awful. The only good thing I can really say about it was the post-match stuff with him hanging Bossman from the cell with help from the Brood. This was Edge and Christian's WrestleMania debut, actually, even in a non-wrestling capacity, but the post-match was better than anything they did in the match, and even that's kind of hokey. It's like, wait, so Bossman's not dead? It's like, wait a minute. And even that, you can see where Undertaker hooked the noose behind his collar to kind of keep it from killing him. So you can even kind of tell that it wasn't really, still dangerous. I wouldn't do it, but you can tell that they gimmicked it, and Bossman wasn't dead. So, But, yeah, that's my pick for by far the worst Undertaker WrestleMania match. So when people say Gonzalez, that match at 9 is the worst, I'm like, no, sir. That match in 15 is way worse. I don't care what anybody says. But with that, now that I've covered all of Undertaker's WrestleMania matches, it is interesting to look at that. It's like I said, his quality ranges from amazing to just downright awful at points, but like I said, all these matches contributed to this one big story of the streak and the legend of the streak and the build-ups and everything surrounding the streak. So they got a lot of good stuff out of it, and like I said, they got an over 2-decade-long storyline out of it as well, the longest-running storyline in WrestleMania's history, and that's pretty remarkable all its own. Great dedication and creative booking on WWE's part, especially since when you consider they didn't even start mentioning the streak until about till number 9, until the build-up to number 9 anyway. So they didn't even realize what they were starting at first, and it's only like it's just as the legend of Undertaker kept getting bigger and bigger, so did the legend of this streak, and it made for some really memorable WrestleMania memories. Maybe not some dramatically interesting WrestleMania matches, because like I said, it was obvious most years that Taker was going to win. But in any case, I thought it was it was. For the most part, it was fun while it lasted. Towards the end, I was kind of getting sick of it. But when I see how it ended and what it eventually created in Brock Lesnar. I was actually happy that it turned out the way it did. And the streak is one of the most memorable aspects of WrestleMania's entire history and deserves a certain level of recognition and praise for that alone. So, that is the end of this entry to the series. Join me next time where I'll actually be posting both videos, hopefully on the same day. That's the goal. Where I cover the best to worst of the WrestleMania WWE Championship matches and WrestleMania main events. So, the conclusion to the series is coming soon, my friends, so stay tuned for that.